What's going on, Wargamers? My name is the War Painter, and welcome to my workshop. Today we're going to be painting up a few more orcs, just like I did in the last video. Nothing too complicated. I've got 3 orcs today, and I do something a little special with the bases that you guys are going to see in the end. So I've got my little boys here, and can't wait to get started. We're going to go hard in the paint. Come on, I thought that was a good one. Whatever, let's get right into it. So you might notice that I'm wearing a bit of a different shirt for my intro. Anyway, what we're doing right here is I'm taking a little bit of putty and putting the figure on top of a shot glass so that I can have an impromptu sort of holder for it so that I can paint on it, make it a little easier for myself. I hope to get a bit of like a wood block or something like that in the future to put under it so I don't have to use a shot glass, but for now it'll do. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a bit of a black base paint on the orc's clothing. I just like the black base paint on the clothing. It gives you a nice base to work off of, and you can make some nice bright accent colors that'll really make the orc stand out a little bit. Once I've got a nice coat of black all over the shirt and the pants there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of black and just put it on the blade of the sword and all over the gun. And that's going to give me a nice base for what I want to do later. There's obviously not really a whole lot you can do with the sword, at least. I'm sure you could do some very cool stuff with the gun, give it a nice cool paint job. With the orcs, colors mean a lot of things for different things. So you could go into the colors of it more. I didn't really think about it too much when doing it. I just kind of did what I thought looked cool and what I liked. But yeah, so the black is going to give me a nice little base coat for what I want to do later. With the magic of video editing, that took me a lot less time than it actually did. So now we've got a nice layer of black on the clothes and the sword and the gun, so we can go ahead and move on to the next step of painting. For me, the next step that I chose to go with was painting the leather straps on the orc in between his little bits of armor on his body. Leather straps, I believe, should be brown. That is the color of most leather, I would think. There is black leather, and I'm sure there's other colors that you could do. I'm going with brown, because that's just the most basic color you can choose for leather. I really can't explain that decision anymore. If you have a problem with it, I don't even know what to say, to be honest. What you can have a problem with, though, is the order in which I choose to do this stuff. There really is no right or wrong order. You can do it however you like. This is the order I've chosen to do it, but later on I did have to go back and touch up some areas where I wasn't as careful with the paint and just had to go over some of the black clothes a little bit again. Like I said, that's really the only issue with the order of how you do things. You might have to repaint over stuff, but at the end of the day, it's usually not that big of a deal. After the brown was done for the leather and all the little straps on his body, what I chose to go with next was the yellow pieces for his armor. The color scheme that I'm choosing to go with for my orcs is with the black clothes and then yellow bits of metal for the armor pieces on them. I think it just kind of makes them pop a little bit, and it is one of the clans. I can't remember it off the top of my head right now. Maybe I'll put a little text blob saying what it is after I search it up. But yeah, so I'm going to put the yellow on here. I'm choosing a bit of a bright yellow just because I like it more, but you can always choose a darker yellow or do whatever color you want. The greatest thing about ORKS is that, and really, I mean, most factions, honestly, but the greatest thing about ORKS is that you can do literally whatever colors you want. Whatever floats your boat, whatever your heart desires. Just do what you think looks best. So there wasn't a whole lot of yellow on the orcs, so that one went pretty quick. After the yellow, I chose to go with the silver, putting it just on his boots and anything that might be metal or metal adjacent. I don't think I really touched too much with the silver on the gun and the sword yet, just because I do dry brush that later and give it kind of like that used metalish look. And I do paint some red on the gun later, which you'll see. That's kind of the bright color for the gun that pops. You'll see that I am taking the color straight from the canister here, the little container for the lead Belker paint, which is what I'm using. They say you should water down your paints, thin them out so that you can get them into every little crack and crevice and so details show, but I did not feel like getting that out for the tiny little bit of silver that I was painting. If I was painting more silver, I might consider doing that, but for this, it really wasn't a big deal. So the next step I chose to go with was putting a bit of red on the gun here, just to really make it pop. I like the red on the gun because it makes it different from the green of the skin and the dark color of the black. That's what I also like about the yellow for the little metal bits of armor, is that it just is very different from that green, that black, and it makes the orcs stand out. I believe that all orcs should have some sort of bright color on them. I mean, they're just boys being boys, having fun out there with their shootas, and doing what they want to do. But at the end of the day, you can make your orcs however you like them, and that's the greatest thing about orcs and why I love them so much. So now all I'm doing here is just taking a little bit of Morcast bone and just lightly pushing it onto his teeth there so I don't clog them up too much so you can still see each tooth. And then I put a little bit on the skull on his hip there as well because it's a skull, it should be bone colored. The teeth are bone colored just because it's a good color for teeth, that's all. So once I've got all the details of the orc done, the last thing that I like to do is the skin. And the way I like to do the skin is I like to first prime the orc with the green skin color, and what that does is it gives me a good base to use the contrast paint on. And the contrast that I use is called orc flesh, rightfully so, because I'm using it for the orc flesh. And the contrast is just, I use the Citadel color contrast paint. It's just a very kind of transparent paint, I guess. It's almost like a glaze that'll just go over, and it'll still show the green underneath, but it gets in all the little cracks, crevices, makes the shadows a little darker, it makes the skin a little bit darker, and it really just makes his muscles pop. It's going to make all the features in his face pop, and it gives me a nice dark green orc skin, which is what I like. You might see on some of the newer box art for orcs, they do a lighter green skin, but I do prefer the darker skin, so that's what I'm going with. Now here's where I'm taking a little bit of the lead Velcro that I used for the silver earlier, and I'm gonna dry brush it a little bit on the edges of the sword there and a little bit on the gun, just to kind of give it that brush metal effect that it's been used. And now here, unfortunately, is where disaster has struck, so I will let the clip speak for itself. Yeah, that's the sound of my money going down the drain. I did still get to use the little bit that was on the mat while it was there before I cleaned it up, so I guess not a complete waste. You may notice that this little container of known oil is almost completely empty, and that is because I have spilled it before. So you think I would have learned the first time, but apparently not. Now that fiasco is over with, I'm just going to take a little bit of this light green and just dot it right into the eyes. Some people may like to do red eyes for their orcs, but I don't think the orcs are trying to be mean or aggressive. I think they're just boys trying to have fun time. So I give them a nice light green color to their eye, and I think it looks great. So with all of that, we've completed one singular boy. After losing about a quarter of a container of known oil, it is finally over with. So now we can go ahead and get on to the rest of them. So I'm going to take a little bit of putty, stick them to my shot glass, and just go ahead and speed through these next couple. what I want to do is do something special by adding some more jazz to their bases here. And how I'm going to do that is with just a little bit of corkboard. I'm going to cut it up and glue it onto their bases and color it to look like terrain. So I'll show you guys how that goes. Now my method of making these little rocky pieces for the base is a little crude. I'm just kind of tearing it apart like an animal, and whenever I need to fit it under the foot here, you'll see I just kind of peel it off with my nail. You could do it a little bit nicer with like a little X-Acto knife or something like that and really get it nice and cut. But I do think tearing it apart like this makes it look more natural and rocky. So, you know, whatever floats your boat and whatever you think looks nice in the end works. Some cork on all the model's bases now, so I'm going to go ahead and paint them up and you guys can see the end result. Is now painted, and the rocks and the dirt, and then I went ahead and painted the rim of the base black there. And I mean, it's just small little detail to add to the figure, but I think it just adds a little more and makes the figure pop a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint up the other two, and I'll show you guys the end result. So you may have noticed that the yellow on that orc that I was showing there in that last clip looked a little bit brown and dirty kind of on the edges, and I did that with dry brushing. I didn't really explain that because that was part of the time-lapse portion of the video. But what I did is I just took a little bit of brown and just put it on a short and thick brush and wiped away most of the paint. It's the way you normally do dry brushing, excuse me. And then I just kind of put it around the edges to kind of give it that dirt effect, so it's not just like a bright, clean yellow, because I don't think an orc who's out there in battle, getting dirty, getting bloody, would have just clean, bright yellow armor. They would be dirty. But yeah, that's just how I like to do it. All three models are now officially done. I did add a couple of grass tufts to some of them, just to add a little bit more to the model, make it a little bit special, you know, a little bit different. These terrain pieces you can just find anywhere, pretty much Amazon, eBay, wherever you shop for your stuff. But yeah, so I hope you guys liked the video. If you do, be sure to like, maybe subscribe if you want to see more, and thanks for watching, guys.